Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to our first resilience conversation of the year with Dav Bansal from Howells Architects, which will be hosted by Phil Twiz. And I'm just going to introduce who we are. We're the Birmingham Architectural Association. I'm Marina. I'm the president and also an associate at Intervention Architecture. The association itself was formed in 1875, so we're really quite old, but we're also a REBA branch. And we're just a collective of people that are interested in all aspects of architecture and having events and also promoting research and development in those areas. So I just want to thank all our sponsors who have made this possible and made it always free, and last year have helped us to donate £7,500 to Architects Benevolent Society. If anyone is struggling with mental health or anyone that you know in the architecture industry, I do recommend that you get in touch with them. They're fantastic, and they also provide financial help as well. So thank you very much to our patron sponsors, Alamere, Allgood, Altro, Ibstock Bricks, Kitchen Gallery, Milliken, Rayners, Taylor Maxwell. As you can see, they're all behind me in the screen, hopefully. And before I hand you over to Phil, I just wanted to let you know of a few events that we have coming up. So on the 18th of February, we're joined by a multidisciplinary set of panelists to discuss how and why we should engage the youth in planning and architecture decision making, and how we do it. So do recommend that one. And we have coming up sort of on the 3rd of March, a more interactive breakout room discussion as part of the Green series Material Banks, which will be talking to the Birmingham circular economy and you guys hopefully about climate change and sustainability and a range of topics that will be presented on the night. And last but not least, we have the Women in Architecture mini-series coming up on the 8th of March, as well as celebrating International Women's Day that starts on that day too. We will be getting in touch with all practices to put forward a recommendation for their local a female from their practice and the work that they've been doing, so that we can celebrate it. Obviously this year it will be online, but that's enough from me, and I'll hand you over to Phil Twiz, who's the regional REBA REBA West Midlands regional director and partner at Gensler.
Thanks, Marina. Thanks very much indeed, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's like a great attendance. We've got almost 70 people here this afternoon to join us. I'm very pleased to welcome Dav Bansal here this afternoon to join me in conversation, to share his thoughts, his experience with Howells Architects and their journey and their response to resilience, essentially. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Dav, partner at the Howells Architects. Do please, as you're listening to Dav, think about any questions. We've got chat and Q&A at the bottom. If you put your questions in there, we will get to those at the end of the session. Look forward to an engaging presentation and conversation. Thanks, Dav, over to you.
Thank you, Phil, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I do hope everyone is coping well during this third lockdown and enjoying the many walks in the park. I was hoping to do this talk in a room when I was approached by the BAA, so that with you all in the room, I could read the audience and also know when to stop talking. But I'm afraid you're going to have to bear with me for the next 15 minutes or so. So, as Phil mentioned, when I was asked to talk about resilience, there is usually a tendency to talk about the strategic business plans to navigate the business through a pandemic, a recession, or an economic downturn, and how to make, in some cases, drastic changes to react to lower turnover, costs, lack of work. But that's not an answer. To us, I think that's a short-term fix to survive. So I was thinking, let's not talk just about the pandemic, as we have survived 3 other recessions before this. And, previously we've had no support from the government. We all know the furloughing scheme has been a tremendous help for many businesses to help balance costs against spend. So this time round, resilience is not about protecting your profits. At GHA, we use these downturns to pause and reflect, and to plan how we can be stronger when we come out of them, and also be prepared for future bumps in the road. I believe that, a resilient organisation is also a long-term sustainable one with strong foundations and ethical core values from the outset in why we are here and doing what we are doing. This is not about turnover or size, because all of that stuff falls into place afterwards if you get the basics right. So I'm going to instead talk about those things that I believe really makes us resilient and keeps us relevant. Our strong foundations and culture, investing in our people, sharing a design manifesto, our collaborators and partners, and also in how we communicate our messages, our communication strategy. Going back to the start, Glenn actually set up the business in a recession in 1990 when he returned to Birmingham, and it was a really tough time then. I remember interest rates being as high as interest on mortgages being as high as 14%. So it was a really tough sort of recession that many businesses went through, and many redundancies happened. So, but this also made him realise that if he's going to start something, it has to be something that is enjoyable and fun doing, to make it last for a long time, and also highly ambitious, because otherwise, why bother? From the very start, the culture was a reflection of Glenn's vision, and he was always keen to share this with everyone, and those who collaborated with us, our clients, our consultants, so that we never lost the very culture that made us interesting. It was about bringing together the brightest people to collaborate and explore. It was a sort of a knowledge and ideas-led approach, bringing clarity in our thinking and delivering designs that can stand the test of time. These were innovative and underpinned by simple organizational diagram to ultimately help realize the ambition of our clients. We do believe we are an organization that is enlightening, highly ambitious, but also highly creative, trying to enrich the lives of people who work with us, people who we work with, and the communities that we affect, but also transform places through our collaborative work. I joined GHA after 10 years in mid-1999, after I graduated from my part 2. And what attracted me to stay was the energy and the excitement of the studio, and the encouragement to be brave, to challenge and to learn from one another. It felt just like being at university, but I guess even better, because I was expected to take my enjoyment seriously. And this is the same culture that still flourishes today after over 2 decades. It's hard work, but it's very rewarding and stimulating in how much you can develop and have fun at the same time. Having grown from a small studio, we still regard ourselves as a family, a big family now, but still a family, where openness, honesty, and excelling in our capabilities is part of our DNA. We're a highly determined organisation that never gives up, but one that is also supportive and compassionate to sort of nurture our talent. And part of that is investing in people. Now, with this culture and this shared determination, it helps to attract and, more importantly, retain people. So we aim to grow our leadership and our designers only through homegrown talent. Now, this means we have a strong, loyal base of experienced people who complement each other's skills, but also understand our culture and share the values of our openness and honesty. And I think this makes us a resilient business, a studio, who are skilled, dedicated, but we all go the extra mile to help each other and the practice. And this is an asset that many of our clients always remind us of being our USP. Part of this comes down to our efforts on mentoring, nurturing, and training our people to develop their potential through their design reviews, academy sessions with external visitors, research and development, building and site visits, and as well as social events, celebrations, and as many of you all know, we also love to party hard as well. And also considering our projects from the start to the finish. from the early sketches through to the animations and the models and onto the manufacturing of the parts in the factory through to the site installation is a huge investment of time that we put into developing our talented designers and architects. I mean, this is an example of One Centenary Way project at Paradise, which is the first ever steel exoskeleton design in the region. And we explored the structural options using models and animations with our engineers, Arab, to span over the A38 tunnel. And in turn, this became the architectural language of the building as well. So, you know, we believe that as current leaders and partners, we regard ourselves as custodians with a responsibility to develop the next generation of leaders so that our resilience of the practice lies in its actual legacy and succession. And to help inspire the younger generation right from the start, we offer apprenticeships and placements. And we have maintained this during the pandemic as well, which is, you know, even more so important, and hosted our online work experience program with Uncle Tom Bloxham, who, you know, for over 20 young budding designers. Now, as a family, it's also important to have a shared vision to collaborate in how we approach the design of places and buildings. And this is not about the aesthetics, but about the ethics behind our approach. So we therefore developed our in-house manifesto, called Clean, so we could critique and govern our own designs. And it's not a house style, but it's what every project in our studio must address and consider so that we begin every opportunity from these first guiding principles. Crafted, considering the materials and the collaboration with manufacturers to provide a crafted, high quality and resolved design, which is on budget to deliver the best optimum solutions. Lean, we try to make our buildings lean. So less is definitely more. And this is because they use less material, they are more economic to build, and they consume less energy. Elegance, we work hard to make our buildings look elegant and effortless, but also have the integrity as an outcome of an intelligent and well-considered process. So there's a real sort of ethics approach to making decisions and having the rationale to be able to justify those decisions as well. Appropriate. Every project needs to be bespoke and respond to what is important for the location, the culture, the economy, and the climate, as well as for the people who live, work, and enjoy the place. So no two projects are the same, and every project offers a lesson that we can learn and build on for the next one. And then narrative. The story is perhaps the most important starting point for any project. Unless we have a clear narrative that can be communicated in a simple way, we haven't got a design that can be developed. Now, this has helped us all to work together collaboratively and creatively with a clear approach, especially for our upcoming emerging architects to develop their design skills. So it is a sort of a design code that we can pass on to our future generations. We have also grown a range of design toolkits, from model making to visualizations and real-time design software, all of which helps us to interrogate and explore ideas. But it's also delightful to see how a model that tackles a design challenge can also be engaging and rewarding for everyone at all levels. A significant part of our continual involvement is in our continual involvement and investment is in our digital and IT systems. So, as well as a training for staff to make sure we stay ahead in the technology advancements and use it to broaden our toolkit. And in some cases, help us, develop test tools like Mesh to estimate carbon output. Other benefits include the range of generative, automative, and parametric tools that help us to make swift, informed decisions to guide our design direction. For example, which facades will provide the most shading and also provide the least, solar gains. So, but I must stress, this is not a design tool, but an interactive tool to help inform our decisions. So our digital system studio is tasked to spearhead this research and development in our organization. And again, this investment in training ourselves to excel in the use of technology as an enabler is part of our resilience to get smarter and get more efficient. Our support network extends to our collaborators and partners, our clients and our consultants that we work with. So, who we have forged long-standing relationships with And the few we work with are those that have become our closest and trusted friends. Like with our own family, we share the values and the vision. Hence, the outcome is far more than just a beautiful building. It's learning from each other. It's allowing us to push our boundaries, and it's realizing that their ambitions through our transformational designs. And that's hugely rewarding and content. And this continual support from our trusted and loyal clients offers us resilience in a way that, through these very tough times. And as many of their projects are long-term and go beyond economic cycles. So we're not talking about projects that will start and finish within a sort of recession. These are projects that last over 5-10 years. So it's much more of a long-term interest in how we develop these places. And I remember when we started on the Paradise Master Plan in the last recession in 2008, and the client, Rob Groves, told me that he'd planned for 2 more recessions in the life of his project. So in return, we are committed to go the extra mile and bring that added value to our clients, spending their money wisely, but getting the best outcome for them and the end users or the communities that are impacted by our decisions. And for us, this generates nearly 75% plus of our repeat work with our few clients. And therefore, we rely less on open competitions or trying to win new clients in a competitive market. And there's many benefits in this approach, working with our few clients, in that we know who we are working with, we know their strengths, and we know their businesses, so that we can be efficient, trusted, and effective. But above all, we can have fun and be open and bold with them. However, with this stability and resilience, the other 25% of our work is also a combination of one-off arts and cultural projects and research-led projects, such as our Gloucester Gateway services, which challenge the conventional service station typology, and working closely with the client's ambitions, we questioned the customer experience and instead created a landscape retreat with a low energy and low carbon design, as well as a F&B offer to support the local farmers and their produce. And none of the above, none of what I've been discussing can be effective unless we don't communicate and ensure the message is embraced and shared by all of us to enjoy collectively. And this is by far the most important aspect of our organisation and can never be underestimated. We even opened our very own canteen and gallery spaces on the ground floor to become a bustling hub for people to talk, obviously in pre-COVID days. But this will all come back as it's the soul and heart of our place. And this goes from communicating our projects, our newcomers, our weekly newsletter, the topic and industry updates, but also our plans looking forward, including monthly business updates, market intelligence, and how we have done. And we instill this transparency and openness into our culture so that everyone can understand the commercial decisions we need to make. Sometimes those decisions are easy ones, and sometimes they're very difficult ones. However, communication also happens at a personal level. And like any family, we look out for each other. And this has been even more so important over the last 9 months. We've continued to hold regular studio presentations, virtual get-togethers, thought leadership debates, design and technical reviews, quiz nights, and talks, as well as encouraging our studio leaders to continue with their check-ins and personal developments for their team. And this is not only important for the well-being and mental health of our people, but also to ensure they continue to develop professionally and also improve their skill sets. And again, this is another intrinsic part of our culture to develop an academy of the brightest people. And therefore, we have invested the time during this pandemic as an opportunity to improve our skills, our systems, and our designs. And so, in conclusion, for some businesses, the focus may be about charging the lowest fees, compromising design, or making cost savings through cutting young staff and overheads as part of their survival plan. For us, our resilience is an integral part of our culture, thinking long-term and believing in our core values, therefore investing in our people. So we use this time to become stronger and get smarter. Last year, we achieved 80% of our turnover that was forecasted prior to the pandemic. And we've secured just under 60% of this year's turnover, which is exceptional, but not surprising, considering the tremendous effort I have seen from our GHA family. And finally, we have lots and lots to celebrate this year, from winning the AJ Building of the Year for the English National Ballet, to completing our biophilic Wardian Towers at Canary Wharf, and our award-winning Moss House for University of College Birmingham. We have promoted 2 new homegrown partners who have both been with us for more than 15 years to lead our Birmingham studio, and we will be celebrating our 30th anniversary. So we have so much to look forward to, and with some exciting projects in the pipeline, we can't wait to get back together. So we do truly believe that the investment we have made in our culture, in our people, and our clients will always pay off in being a resilient, sustainable, and a rewarding practice for all of us to enjoy. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. That's an awful lot to take in about 30 slides and 15 minutes at breakneck pace. I'm sure there'll be some great discussion. So to everyone attending, I think it's the 90 attendees now, so I really do hope that do please fire in your questions using Q&A function. I think you can vote them up and down as well. A lot of interesting themes there that you picked up on there, Dab, about the culture, about people and engagement. But if you could perhaps, could you almost like summarize the culture in one sentence? What's the key thing that matters, the thing that's driving GHA and you as a firm? I
think we, first of all, I think we, as I mentioned, we take our enjoyment seriously. So we've got a fantastic team of people who are passionate, who are sort of talented, and who really enjoy making places, making ideas, and making buildings. So when you bring that creativity into a place, into what we regard ourselves as an academy, then what you end up getting is something amazing. And that drive and determination is something that takes years to build, and it takes a lot of energy, but also ambition to maintain. I think it's very easy to sort of stop thinking about that and start thinking about the size of your business and, what's going to be a turnover next year, and are we going to build a bigger tower than the next practice down the road, and are we going to sort of do everything? What we want to do is enjoy what we do it responsibly, do it together collaboratively, and actually have fun doing it together. We're custodians for time in our organization, and if we can't have fun and learn and develop, then what's the point of being here? And I think that's what's kept me going for 20 or so years.
You and me both. I mean, just in terms of that, the notion of the academy and bringing people through, I guess that you've got the clean manifesto, the idea of things crafted, lean, elegant, the appropriate, that narrative. How do you get to that? What's the starting point for your project to get that clear narrative?
Starting point on projects.
Yeah. How do you get to that point?
I think first of all, when projects start, I think the first sort of design review we have on a project is the sort of debriefing. So what we do is it's important that a project is not about the end product. It's not about what the design is going to look like, because I think if you start to design the project too soon, then I think you've lost that intelligent, considerate process to go through, and you sort of make shortcuts. And I think it's very much about bringing people together, getting them excited about the opportunity. And yes, there is a brief there. Sometimes that brief can be a one-pager, but a brief is not what's written on the paper. A brief is working with the people that, your clients, your consultants, and your team, and actually coming together and looking at the opportunity that this project could bring more than just meeting its brief. And, and that sort of narrative, that manifesto that we then look at, we try and apply that. What's the story for this project? It's not just about, creating 100 apartments on this site at a height of 15 stories. That's not a project for us. For that, we would turn it down, I guess. For us, the story is what role and what sort of approach is this building going to have on its community, on its context, on its culture, and so on. And then also looking at, so what does that inform in terms of materials, and what does that inform in terms of how we're going to build it? So the leanness, the structure, again, collaborating with our consultants and getting the best people around the table to sort of brainstorm these ideas. But I think that manifesto, it's not prescriptive, but it does give us a way of guiding and informing our designs without trying to be prescriptive about the design itself. We feel that design is something that it's an outcome of a process, not the start of a process, and then you spend your time trying to justify it.
Muted. We're starting to get lots of questions coming in, so thank you very much. A group together sort of on COVID, and one just kind of picking up, I think, from where you are. This is from Simon Meir. I apologise if I have pronounced your name incorrectly. How has GHA coped without the studio culture in regards to design reviews and discussion to progress projects? That's in relation to COVID and the impact of COVID and remote working, I assume, with that.
Yeah, I think every organisation, is struggling with not having that studio culture or being together, because creative minds and that collaboration happens when you're together. And I think we've all struggled there. I think what has helped us sort of not just cope, but actually excel in continuing to do that is our culture, and the fact that we are a family and we have worked together collaboratively, and we have that strong studio sort of environment, has meant that when we've had to sort of all go back to our bedrooms and our dining tables and work remotely, that sort of energy and that trust and that loyalty and that sort of knowing how to work with each other has actually sort of filtered through the way we've worked remotely. So I think if we were an organisation that worked in projects in our own sort of silos, then I think this working remotely, this working on sort of Teams and Zoom would have been a real challenge. So we've maintained our design reviews, we have our design workshops, we have our technical workshops, and we've ensured that these are happening on a weekly basis. Actually, we've had more during COVID because we haven't had the benefit of being in the studio. So I think that's sort of pushed for more. So a lot of our diaries is filled up with design workshops and reviews. And I think it's also improved our skills in presentation, because you're not there having to be able to point at fingers. It means that your presentation and your quality of your presentation and information and that material needs to be pretty right and be told in a very clear narrative. So I think it's even helped us improve our skills.
And so, I mean, do you think, and you've answered a number of sort of similar questions in that response, what are the lessons you've taken from working remotely that you actually want to take forward? What are those things that have worked successfully for you as a design firm, things that you perhaps might want to change, or aspects that you want to take forward when we're all back eventually full time, hopefully some point later this year?
I think one thing that's really we have seen, I guess, excel in ourselves and in my sort of, in sort of rest of GHA is the reliance on communication. I think we've become so better at communicating our messages, not just to each other, but to the organisation. And that's been really important, because again, that's another thing that sometimes we take for granted being in a studio. We don't need to sort of let people know what's happening. So we've had regular business updates, we've had regular sort of talks, thought leadership debates. So one thing we will take when we all get back together is to maintain that program of talks and debates, and ensuring that the communication doesn't fall away. It continues to stay strong, and not to take for granted that we are now together in a room. And I think the other thing is, I think we've all learned that it's also made us realise that there's meetings that we need to be together and talk and be face to face, but there's also meetings where we can actually save time, save travel, save your carbon footprint, and actually do it, remotely. So we're going to be far more smarter and efficient, and also aware of sort of, our own sort of responsibilities to ensure that the meetings that we do have are necessary, they're sort of concise, and we can get the most out of them. So there's a lot of I think a lot of businesses and organisations have learned a lot of good skills because of this sort of, I guess, this sort of situation we're in. But we want to sort of definitely make sure that when we go back, the new norm takes that on board. And also, I think, a lot of us have become a lot more flexible in how we manage our time and how we manage, because work is about activities, not about the hours. And so again, I think that's another lesson that we can all sort of take from this as well.
Do you think that you've been able to manage your work-life balance better or worse? And do you see that with your staff as well? So one of the questions, anonymous here, but with so many members of staff still training in university and learning, how do you advise those working from home to continue their career progression? How are you trying to maintain and supporting them? Because that's one of the things that I think a lot of companies have found, providing that mentorship. When you do need, you can have lots and lots of meetings, but actually that one-to-one, that kind of as you say, that family support that you need, those sort of challenges. How you coping with that and managing with that?
I think it's always going to be difficult. I can't even imagine being a student who's just graduated and not being able to sort of go out and look for those opportunities and meet people, because that's all been taken away from us. So that's difficult. I mean, one, where we are still recruiting, we're still taking on apprenticeships. We are still doing our sort of talks. These talks are fantastic because it helps those graduates to be able to still be connected to the industry in a way. So I think this is very much encouraging. I think we should have this hopefully every week, because it's so much more necessary. But we are recruiting. We've got a strong induction program that our sort of committed sort of members of our team are absolutely passionate about doing. So we have taken on part ones and part twos. We've taken them through a very thorough induction. We've got training academies, we've got links to training programs, and all of that can help them sort of, up their skills and sort of be prepared and get them involved. We have team virtual meetings. Every studio has a meeting at the end of the week to introduce newcomers. So we're doing as much as we can, but I think it's just a matter of, bearing with us, because we haven't got very long to go. We're nearly at the end of this of this sort of lockdown now. And I think the best thing to do is have that positivity to look forward to. And I mean, we've got a sort of we've got a rule in the office. If you mention the word pandemic, you get charged £5, because we just want to make sure that positivity, that we've got something to look forward to, is what's going to bring us through this sort of this third lockdown. But I can't imagine that there's a simple answer to how can graduates replace all that sort of opportunity to meet people. I think that's going to happen. It's just going to take a bit longer in their careers. But I think in the meantime, stay involved with organisations. Go into sort of training programs. There's a lot going out there in terms of online teaching. Listen to some great talks by sort of great architects. This is the opportunity to sort of take that time now and read and learn, because all of that is going to be useful when we all get back to sort of to some new norm.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to one more question just on practice, then I'm going to sort of ask a little bit about your opinions on sort of resilience of the city and the region going forward. And this is actually an anonymous question from an anonymous attendee. GHA, as actually we've talked about previously, you're celebrating your 30th anniversary this year. And then off the back of that, most recently, you mentioned succession, and Shana and others have been brought up to directors. What does GHA anticipate for the next few years? What's your outlook?
We at the moment are, we're taking this time to as I said, to reflect and pause, and we've been hopefully a great success for 30 years. But for us, this is not an organisation that sort of falls apart because of it's because of the founders or the partners. We've got a responsibility as partners to ensure that we develop the next generation of designers and leaders. And all this investment we're making in our design, in our system, in our software, in our training is part of that succession. So we are thinking very hard, and it's something that the partners, Glenn and myself, do take on board. And because what we want to make sure is that, as we sort of mature, we want to leave the organization with people who are even better than us, so they can take that organization and make it even a greater success for the next 30 years. And that's why it's important that we are custodians and not sort of owners of the business. I think that's really important. So we are having conversations. We are making the right decisions on bringing people, giving them responsibility. Our design reviews and our sort of talks and debates are about having open conversations, and it's to allow young designers and people who have got the drive and determination to really sort of rise and look at that opportunity. And I think the role model, the mentoring, the nurturing of our talent, that is all part of our sort of our succession plan.
So, I mean, moving perhaps to Birmingham now, is a great little question from Thomas, which I'll just come on to in a moment. But the city, obviously, where are we? Wednesday, just yesterday, wasn't it? Launched the city plan 2040, and the themes: green, equitable, livable, and distinctive. There's 4 principles underpinning it. GHA, you and Glenn obviously been at the heart of some of those major developments, Paradise and so forth. How do you see the city changing? Has the city become more resilient? It's very interesting. You kind of perhaps we're going into the city at the moment over the last 9 months. So we were used to it changing around us daily.
Yes.
And now you go in every couple of months and you go, crikey, they've actually finished that, and it's changed. How do you see the city evolving, and how do you sort of respond to that, the future city plan that
I mean, first of all, I mean, Birmingham's gone through many pandemics, in the times of sort of Joseph Chamberlain. He sort of transformed the city, creating a sort of a healthier city with with the sort of with drainage systems, the public spaces, the civic heart, and all of that, because he was dealing with a pandemic. So I mean, Birmingham is a resilient city. It's always been great, and how it's always kept itself relevant. It's transformed itself, and it reinvents itself. And I think that's what makes it so resilient and so robust as a city. And I guess looking at the future city vision, I think what it demonstrates for what I took away from it was, one, it shows that the big city plan was a fantastic move 10 years ago, and it's done its job really well, because this is a sequel to that vision. That big city plan actually created a lot of sense and a lot of joined up thinking for the city to grow in a compact and efficient way. I think had we not had that big city plan, we would have had developments that would have now gridlocked the city. So I think that was a really useful thing. So this is a sequel to the big city plan, which is fantastic, tick in the box. We know what the next 20 years will be. And I won't be surprised if we review this in the next 10 years, and we'll be having this conversation again. But it also, I think, in terms of looking at movement and the experience we've had with all of us had with experience over the last 9 months of spending a lot more time in our gardens and walking in the parks, it's the importance of green spaces. And we're not just now thinking about returning the streets and the black tarmac back to pedestrians. We're actually creating even more public realm, more green spaces. And we've now got this quite interesting tapestry or layering of movement from buses to the sprint, to the tram, to trains, to people, to cycles. So I think it's great to see that we're going beyond even our initial ambition. And furthermore, I think it's a very ambitious vision. We're not apologetic, or we're not shying away from density and scale. In some way, Birmingham lacks on sort of the level of density that other cities of its sort of importance have. So we're not really utilizing our brownfield sites in a very efficient way. And therefore, we could very quickly see ourselves compromising our greenbelt sites if we're not making the most of it. So I think it's great to be ambitious about scale and about density. My reservations are that how do we ensure that the quality of the design and the criteria for that density or scale is clear and justifiable? Because it could be a free fall. and that could be a disaster, but it could also then be a very robust and sort of robust criteria for justifying scale where we need scale, and then being able to be ambitious about the amenities and the opportunities and the places that we can create, and then also ensuring that we've got a robust process where we can evaluate the quality of the design. And I think those.
Do you feel that at the moment things have moved incredibly quickly in the city, and some of the city's policies coming from behind and trying to catch up? Maybe you can name names. Are there aspects of the city that you feel, if even at the moment, we need to perhaps go back and, I don't want to say failing, but we want to readdress, and you would say there's still an opportunity where we can do better?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are opportunities where we can be more ambitious, and I think what the future city vision plan has enabled us to do is be brave about movement, in particular private car movement, and that's giving a lot of space back. It showed the new city park where you're taking down buildings to create open green spaces. So that is going to be a complete reevaluation of developments that may be in the planning process or developments that are being developed. So I think a lot of the areas in the city we will go back to them, and we will look at them with even more ambitious ideas for it. But I think that's exactly what this launch was all about. I think it was a sort of it was a taster to sort of think beyond, look a lot further beyond. We're now not just a national city, we're a metropolis, we're sort of a global city, and we can have city parks, and we can have a city where cars are limited and people can cycle and walk. We can be a Cambridge, and beyond that in terms of cycles, but we can be a Barcelona in terms of intensity and the urban grain, and we can have some great spaces and open green spaces like Hammarby and Copenhagen. So I think it's set a really high bar. It's now up to us as the creative minds to be as imaginative and as ambitious as we can.
And do you have the question from Thomas? Have you got a favourite project, a non-GHA project in Birmingham? You would say, actually, that's a really, maybe the one that got away, or the one I wish we'd done that.
Oh God, that's a tough one. That is a really tough
one. What we're here for.
I think no. I'm gonna. Yeah, I can't. I'm struggling to answer that one there. I mean, there are ambitious projects that I think can make a huge change. I think what we do with sort of the interchange, the station interchange. What I'm beginning to see, or I hope I'm beginning to realise, is we're not creating now a city that has one central sort of core. We're creating a conurbation. We're creating conurbations around the city. We're creating lots of centres, and I think what's going to be ambitious, or what will be fantastic, is if we do realise this conurbation. So when we come to Birmingham, we've got this characterful areas which create their own identity and ambitions. You look at Smithfield, it could be downtown Birmingham. You look at the sort of custard factory in Digbeth, that could be the sort of, the Shoreditch of Birmingham. You look at the sort of creative quarter. So we've got opportunities to create lots of centres for Birmingham now. In the same way that London has got a centre. I think we've all got our favourite centres in London, and we go to different places because of different experiences. So I do hope that, that we, and myself and GHA, do get involved with a lot of those, creating those conurbation and those really sort of places that really do create distinct characters for Birmingham.
And what is it comparing Birmingham to those other cities? What do you think it is that makes Birmingham so distinctive? And do you think that makes the city more resilient?
I think what makes Birmingham distinct is it's a combination. We've got I know we always talk about we've got a young population, but I think more importantly, we've got a multicultural population. And what that means, that the multicultural backgrounds bring in so much more into the city that not many of the cities can do. The one challenge I remember when we were sort of working on some of the master plans, Paradise, Smithfield, and East Side, was someone said to me, there's a fact that there's a festival going on in Birmingham every day of the year somewhere, but it happens in communities and settlements outside sort of Birmingham, and in their own communities and their own sort of areas. If we could create a platform in the centre of Birmingham where we could bring every one of those festivals into the city, could you imagine having a city where we've got a festival every day? It would be amazing. I mean, we wouldn't have time to work, but it would be brilliant to have that multicultural, vibrancy in the city where we've got festivals going on. And I think it's about bringing those cultures, those neighborhoods, those communities, and letting them know that the city is open and accessible to all. That's the challenge we've got to, I guess, unlock and take down those barriers.
I mean, thinking about different cultures and different aspirations sometimes competing. There's a question here from audience member. Do you ever turn down work or walk away from a project on moral or ethical grounds?
We have turned away and walked away, and I think part of that has been doing a project or creating places is a collaborative process, and it's about a relationship. What I take away from projects we do is not the building, not just the building, but the relationship and the sort of collaboration and the sort of enjoyment we've had with our clients, with our consultants. If we feel there's a project where the client team and ourselves cannot see eye to eye, we cannot share the vision, we can't share the ambition, and actually there isn't a relationship there. And I guess if I'll be blunt, it's about clients who just want to build something as cheap as they possibly can to maximise the sort of to maximise the profits on their projects. I think sometimes that puts us at a very sort of awkward and uneasy sort of situation, and there has been cases where we have turned down that work. And I'm not talking about value, because for these projects to happen there needs to be a commercial viability, and we can't turn a blind eye to that. They have to be profitable, but what we can do is look at adding value. And I think it's creating value that's important, not maximizing profit at the expense of doing something that can then be a compromise to the place, be a compromise to the city in that respect. So we add value, and I think that's where, if that mutual respect can happen with us and the clients and the consultants, Phil, that relationship is what makes great projects.
And do you think that off the back of the current situation in COVID, has that created opportunities for you, venturing into any new sectors?
Yes, we have. Yeah, I think every organisation is thinking about how do they sort of expand their sort of experience in sectors, and we don't have a culture where we create sector leads, because I think that what we think our culture is based on the approach to projects, the clean manifesto. These things can be applied to a number of sectors, and we find that actually the idea of ideas that are being cross fertilization. People who have worked on residential, sometimes are the best office designers, and those who have worked with universities and colleges, knowing about the adjacency of spaces and the efficiencies and prioritizing costs, are fantastic at designing residential buildings. So we don't create sector leads, we don't create sector studios. Every studio in our organization works on a range of sectors and also a scale of building the projects as well. So we've got small buildings at 2-3 million to large projects at 200 million. So that variety and that sort of range in sector and scale and complexity of projects is what makes, I believe, GHA an interesting place to be. But yeah, so I think healthcare, infrastructure are very sort of sectors that are going to play a very important role. But also, I think we're all going to have to revisit our sectors that we think we've got a lot of knowledge in: residential, offices, sort of arts galleries and all of that, because we're going to have to rethink about how do these buildings now operate in a new norm. So I think what we've done is set ourselves some really good challenges to relook at some of the existing sectors and create even better buildings that may be more relevant to the experience we've had.
And I'm going to bring it. We've got about another 5 minutes or so just on questions and discussion. Bring it back to you, just excuse me, just personally for a moment. And a really great question's coming from an audience member. Just reflecting on your growth from a part 2 to partner within GHA, what's been the most distinctive and defining moment in your career?
Oh, I think I was fortunate when I joined GHA in 1999. I was very fortunate to work with Glenn on a number of competitions. We were a small practice. We were out, sort of looking at interesting projects and doing competitions. And I think that the sort of turning point for me was when coming out of university, making decisions for myself, and actually trying to present projects at university is all great, but what you're doing is looking out for yourself and being responsible for the context you're working in. When you walk into practice, the responsibility you're given and the trust you're given can be a range of experience. It can be from micromanaging someone and not having that trust to being completely sort of too free-fall and not having the experience. And I think what my U-turn was when I realized that, there's a sort of decision-making that where Glenn and some of the other partners gave me the opportunity to sort of say, well, okay, if you think that's a good idea, go and convince us. And I think that sort of what that did was sort of really fire up my determination that if I have got a good idea, or if I've got a sound approach, what I need to do is work on it and actually really sort of convince myself, convince my colleagues, and also convince partners, and also then beyond that, the clients and so on. So I think, but I will say one thing, I think I have lots of U-turns in at GHA. I think, to be honest with you, I think I have a U-turn pretty much every day, because every day is an opportunity where you can shape someone's life, you can give someone the responsibility, you see someone else really, make those important decisions. I think it's a very rewarding profession we're all in, and we should never take that for granted. And I think if you can then be in an organization where that creativity and that sort of imagination, but you've got some very strong leaders and also a very clear vision for the organization as well as your design approach, I think those things can make a huge difference to your career. But for me, what advice I'd give to a lot of young people is be determined, be patient, and actually be keen to learn. And if you do that, everything else will fall in place. Your titles, your promotions, your salaries, all of that will happen. But what you've got to do first is get your experience and get that exposure to then sort of to then build your career on really strong foundations.
And kind of from that, I'm thinking about career growth, and there's a number of questions that are sort of come in. I'm just trying to pull them together into one. How are you supporting your part 3s through their studies? While everyone's remote, the details of business, how the practice runs when everything is so remote. Is it through those meetings, these sort of weekly meetings you're talking about, or is there something you've been able to do to support them and make them more resilient through this time?
I mean, we have every studio leader has a responsibility, and directors and partners have the responsibility for quarterly check-ins. So we do quarterly check-ins with everyone, and as part of that, we know obviously those who are doing their part 3, there's particular experience and understanding of contracts, projects, stages that they need to understand. So we try and make sure that their experience is relevant to their studies. And we've also got a part 3 group. So rather than sitting on your own and trying to do your part 3, we ensure that the part 3 group come together and they have group sessions. And then we've also then got 4 or 5 part 3 mentors in the studios who then help one-to-one with individuals, but also help to share their experiences and knowledge with the group of part 3s as well. So there is a structure where we ensure that we make that investment in terms of time and knowledge from our part 3 mentors to our part 3 students. And to be open and honest about it, it's important because that investment allows us to ensure that when does Part 3 qualify, we've got experienced experienced people who can step up to being an architect, and therefore that investment again in doing so has a rewarding payback.
Do you think, you talked about earlier on that cheapest isn't best. Is that something that we as a profession need to address for our own professional resilience? How does the culture of long working hours in architecture, is that sustainable business model? Is that something do we need to address that as a profession?
We do. I think we certainly do, and yeah, it is. I'll be quite frank about this. I think when overtime is overtime because of the lack of management or the inefficiencies or the sort of lack of communication or a client being difficult and not being managed or so on, I think that overtime is a problem, because due to that sort of I guess lack of managing those projects and managing expectations, managing people, that a lot of the people suffer as a result of it. I think if the overtime is what people are spending to sort of improve their projects because they're passionate about it and they love, don't get me wrong, I spend a lot of hours doing what I do because I enjoy it. That is my hobby, that is my enjoyment. If I can sort out a design, I'll do that on a weekend. So to me, that's not overtime. That is me taking, enjoying my hobby. So, I think we've got to be very clear about, it's a very difficult profession. It's not a profession that once you learn, you can sort of repeat that lesson on every project. We're learning every day, even at my age, Phil. We're still learning. We're still making mistakes and we're still learning. But I think, the more you give to that, to your profession and to your commitment to those projects, the more you'll get out of it. So I think, overtime, because you're passionate about what you want to do, is very different from overtime because of lack of management, low fees, and so on. So I think what we've got to first of all do is address those challenges in any organisation first, so that people don't feel they're doing overtime because of someone else's incompetency, lack of being competent about it.
We are almost out of time, so I'm going to just very close on a quick question, and apologies to those who haven't quite got to some very interesting questions we still haven't got to, but I'm just going to close with a quick one. Who is your favourite architect and why?
Who's my favourite architect?
You can't say Glenn.
No. No. My favourite architect. I love the work of Louis Kahn, Mies van der Rohe, and even Louis Sullivan. I think, and the reason being, I think the clarity in thinking, the sort of clear approach, and they're sort of simple yet interesting sort of architecture is very sort of, it's an essay. You look at their buildings and you can read that essay of the decisions they made and what impact they were sort of visioning to create. So I think and I guess a lot of it is because I do take a lot of reference from a lot of lessons learned from their projects and looking at a lot of their projects to inform how I sort of look at or approach design decisions that we have to make. So I wouldn't say I've got a favorite one. What I would do is that every project has a story, and that story can relate to someone who has done something previously. And so what we can do as architects is learn from others. We're never going to come up with an idea that no one has ever had before. That's, no architect's ever going to do that. Our ideas are a combination of our experience and a combination of someone that has done something, an architect that's done something before. So let's learn from that history, that rich history of great architects.
Thank you very much. And we're up to time. It's 6 o'clock. Thank you very much. We've finished on time. Thank you to you. Thank you to everyone who's attended. To say a great session, some very insightful and at times challenging questions in there as well. It remains for me to say thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you to our sponsors. And that the recording of the session will be uploaded and available in a couple of days on the BAA's website. So do please share that. And if you want to come back to it, that would be great. So Dav, thank you very much for joining the conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. I mean, these are great forums to really sort of have the opportunity to sort of talk, to talk about these sort of experiences we're having. So I think have them every week if you can, Phil. Too much. That's far too much for the BAA committee to organise. I think it's hard enough as it is. But as you say, we enjoy it. So, Dav, thank you. Thank you, everyone else. Have a lovely evening and a great rest of the week, everybody. And we'll see you at the next event. Brilliant. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.